Okay, and let me share.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to week 6. It is hard to believe that we're already at week 6. And congratulations if you're still with us. We're delighted to have you. And Dr. Stem and I lost a couple people this week, so I was saddened to see that. But I'm geared up and ready to go with the rest of the group. And I think everybody's doing real well. And I had real good scores on my AAPSL Task 4. Dr. Stebbin, I had and they were ready to go to the final drop box. So I was really pleased with that.
Right, and likewise, um, I I was some excellent action plans, and most of the students had already. Um, well, again, it makes it so much easier when your administration is on your within your PLC. But most of them had addressed that, you know, with their submission on Sunday. And the thing I looked at, the nature of this assignment and how the majority of you managed the assignment and then turned in the quality of work that you turned in, that tells Dr. Revis and me so much about your growth in just this short period of time. She and I talked about this. So we have seen, and most of you, we've seen tremendous growth, um, and don't you backslide just because we're bragging on you right now. That means that you have turned the curve, and we told you that if you stick with us, that would happen. And I think if we had a testimony time like they used to do old timey testimonies in church, I think most of you could say, I realized the moment when it all started assimilating and coming together. I think that you realize that. Dr. Revis, I was highly pleased with the AAPSL Zoom assignments. The leaders in all three, they were as professionally prepared as any students I've ever had with that assignment. And I can honestly say there was not one team that did not do exactly as we laid it out and stuck to the topics and really supported each other. And their reflections, they realized that their reflections, almost all of them commented on how that just helped confirm a lot for them, and how the comments from their peers helped them. So, I say, again, job well done. If you owe us anything, we're not going to camp out here, but you know who you are, and we're going to move on, and you need to get it to us um, as soon as possible. So, anything else, Dr. Revis, with those assignments? I don't need to say anything else about it.
Well, one of the things that I enjoyed hearing in the reflections or reading in the reflections was about how many of you commented about how nice it was to finally meet your
Right.
peer reviewers and how much you have gelled. And the good thing about it is you're going to keep these same teams probably throughout your coursework with Gardner Webb. Now I've got to even up one team and I'll talk about that later, but you guys really did a good job, and I agree with what you said. Our Zoom leaders were spot on with being prepared and with a PowerPoint and everything. We're going to talk about another Zoom meeting later in the session tonight, and it's going to be a little bit different than the one you just completed, but I was very pleased with your preparedness, your participation, and with the Zoom leaders getting things organized and facilitated very, very nicely.
Right. Job well done. Please note that, and I've already had several of those that had to do any revision at all they've been cleared with the revisions. Um, and I've had several to submit for a final task 4 grade already. Just remember that if you have not submitted for Dr. Revis and me to look at the revisions that you need to make, that is due to us by tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. Now you'll see on the agenda today that there's some back-to-back things, but I think you'll understand the whys of it and the anxiety that some of you may have about it. I think you'll be okay when we get through tonight. So just make sure you get it to us by tomorrow afternoon by 6 o'clock so we can clear you. Go ahead and put it in there, get it behind you. Um, we're going to introduce in just a moment, we're going to introduce AAPSL Task 5, which is the last of the 5 tasks for the AAPSL. Please note in the future writing, note this assignment is due differently than the rest of them. Your peer reviews are over with. You will not have any more peer reviews. And I just wanted to let you know that we, as a team, we all looked at the peer reviews and we decided up until this semester, students had to do 2 peer reviews per task. So there would have been 8 peer reviews that you would have done for the AAPSL. You would have had to done 6 peer reviews for the APTEL. We cut it down to 1 for the AAPSL, and you do not do any for the APTEL. So your peer reviews are over with. So just know that your students before you, they had much more to do. And we did take away some of those responsibilities so that you could spend more quality time on the actual task work and the research and things that you had to do. But notice that for Dr. Revis and me only, if you're in Dr. Revis's class, it goes to her. The assignment that we're going to talk about tonight, task 5, is due for our review by Friday evening at 6 o'clock. I know some of you are palpitating and stressing already. Don't. You'll understand. You'll understand that it's very doable once we go over it tonight. And the reason we have to have it for on Friday is that we've got to look at it and give you time to make any adjustments to it if there are adjustments that need to be made, because it also is due on Sunday night by 6 o'clock as a final. Okay? That again, there will be no peer reviews with that. You're over with. Then after that, we're going to show you, we'll do it again next week, but we're going to show you how to put it all together, what you will do after that with our permission with Turnitin and with our permission for Task Stream. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go to that place, the Blackboard, and show you. Do not touch it. Don't you be Eve and get the apple off the tree and touch it until we tell you that it's time to touch it. If you hit Turnitin and do anything in there, you don't get another opportunity. Task Stream means it goes to somebody other than Dr. Revis and me that we don't even know. And it's in their hands. And they will do that outside evaluation on it in Task Stream. And you don't want it to go there until we know that it's ready to go there. So do not touch those until we tell you to. And then we're going to introduce you to the case study 1 for the AAPSL. And then Dr. Hamilton at the end is going to share with you some things that she needs to remind you of about the internship, the competency folio and task stream. And then just know that next week, Dr. Revis and I will not have new information that we have to introduce next week. We will give you a brief introduction of the next evidence that you'll have to be doing. But the majority of next week will be us just tidying up some things and then giving Dr. Hamilton the time that she needs to make sure that you are on task with the things that are going to go to her. A reminder that if you are in Dr. Revis's class, everything for what we're doing for the coursework, everything goes to her. If you're in my class, everything goes to me. But if you are with your internship work that Dr. Hamilton is talking about, Dr. Revis and I, it doesn't come to her, it doesn't come to me. Do not click on our names when you are clicking on information for your clinical internship and the things that Dr. Hamilton has introduced to you. Only click Dr. Hamilton's name following her instructions, and she'll talk about that a little bit more. I want you to make sure that you look at the agenda. It's reminding you of everything for this week. Then as a look at next week, we're going to introduce the case study this week, but it's not actually due until week 7. But we're going to go ahead and talk to you about it in case you get to, in case your group decides to go ahead and move on with it. There are your norms. We don't need to go over those. You know what they are. And then I want you to look what we have placed at the end of your agenda. This is the process that we're going to be talking about tonight. So it's in Blackboard, but we put it on your agenda as well. So we can go over this tonight, but this is telling you how to put it all together into a final document. And again, we will review some of this next week, since this week, all of this is not due, but some of you are going to be working ahead and we don't want to hold you back if this applies to you. We'll be coming back to this shortly. So Dr. Revis, with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull up the helpful hints document. Let me find it. Where is it?
While you're looking for that, let me just go ahead and say a few things about your task 5. You do not pull together a PLC for task 5. So that should, and so Dr. Stedman's going to talk about that.
Okay. Let's look at task 5. Task 5 is the 5th of the task for the AAPSL. Candidates, what you're going to do in task 5, you're going to reflect on your AAPSL experience. You've talked about it, but this is personal. You're going to this is you. This is about you. This is about what you have experienced in the last, and counting this week, the 6 weeks that you're working on the AAPSL. And you're going to critically assess your personal development in each competency from the work of the AAPSL content, and I want you to notice that and from the clinical experience. For the AAPSL, you will address 12 of the required 21 competencies, and we're going to tell you what 12 they are. That means that if there's 21 and you do 12, that's 9 of them that's left. It doesn't take rocket science to decide when you're going to have to do that. There are not 5 tasks for the APTEL that you're going to be doing after we complete the AAPSL. There are 4. Task 4 of the APTEL will be the remaining 9 competencies that you do not do for task 5 of the APTEL. So, Dr. Revis, these are the 12 and we're going to show them where they can see all 21 again, but this is all you need to reflect on at this point. These required 12. Dr. Revis, we need to look at them And if there's anything that we need to make comments on, we need to do that. Do not confuse this, however, with what Dr. Hamilton has talked to you about with your competency folio. While it's the same competencies, the 21 competencies, what you do for her is differently than what you're going to be doing for Dr. Revis and me. You are only going to be doing narrative work. There will be no artifacts for Dr. Revis and me. And we're going to show you how you're to do the narrative work. However, you will be doing some narrative work and you will be doing artifacts for Dr. Hamilton that she's going to remind you of later on. So don't get the two confused. The folio has stuff in it. You're only going to write for us. So Dr. Revis, if you'll just talk about these 12 competencies,
Okay.
anything that you need to elaborate on.
Well, the biggest thing I want to remind you of is you've got to show leadership outside of your classroom when you're talking about these competencies. So, for example, the first one, communication. Guys, you communicate every day in your job, but this is leadership outside of the classroom. So, for example, you're always going to start out each competency by saying, I demonstrated communication during my coursework when and you can reflect on anything you've done in your coursework. Or you can say throughout the AAPSL process. Evaluators are going to look for two things: that you reflected on something in your coursework that shows leadership and communication. And secondly, in the next paragraph, during my clinicals. Now, it gets a little sticky here because you do know that we allow you to count when you're working on your APSL in the school. We allow you to count that for your clinical, but you can't talk about your coursework for your clinical here. So, for example, in this communication, you would need to find something that you've done in your clinical that's not the APSL work. For example, I communicated with all teachers about early dismissal duty roster, or I communicated with all teachers, da 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 da. This is not your APSL work. I will send it back to you if you if you put APSL work in your clinical work.
So Dr. Revis, so what Dr. Revis says, let me just reiterate this. Communication is going to be your first one. Okay, you're going to have two paragraphs for each of the 12 competencies. The first paragraph is going to be about your work with the APSL, your coursework, the APSL experience. That's what you're talking about. And with communication, in your APSL experience, how did you communicate? How did you communicate, doing your work, doing your coursework? And you could actually say, in my coursework with the APSL, that could actually be how you begin that sentence. And then you're going to talk about that. And then the second paragraph, notice what Dr. Revis said. During my clinical experiences, So you're going to have two paragraphs, narratives for each of the 12 competencies. Now, Dr. Revis, don't you agree that for each competency, we shouldn't see repeated information from other competencies? You've got to be creative with these experiences, and every competency should be unique in itself with a unique experience. And again, they're listed for you. Those 12 competencies are listed for you. You've got to use them. Notice how you begin each one. boldface print, aligned to the left, 2 paragraphs with hanging indents. Make sure your paragraphs are properly indented. Um, for these, you do not, unless you reference something, you do not have to have a reference section for this. You do not have to have an appendices because you're not referring. You're only addressing the 12 competencies with 2 really strong paragraphs. Now, don't don't minimize this your responsibilities for this assignment. First of all, we're not going to let it go through if we think it's weak work. Secondly, we've had some evaluators in the past that truly concentrated on this because it told them a lot about you and where you were at this point in this course. Dr. Revis, I can't think of anything else we need to say about it.
No, do we want to take any questions on
Yes,
that, Dr.
let me
Ted?
let me let me stop share right now.
Guys, this is the easiest one you will have to do. Don't make it hard. You're just doing your reflections, and you know how to do that because you showed that from your Zoom reflection. But again, it's leadership outside of the classroom, and it's 2 paragraphs. First paragraph is reflecting on something you did with the work of the AAPSL. The second paragraph is your clinical work, not counting stuff you did for your AAPSL.
And nothing should reflect your role as a classroom teacher or if you're in the classroom. Now, if you are already in a role in leadership at the school and that's tied into the work that you're doing with the app, so then by all means that's you can talk about that. But if you're in the classroom, this has nothing to do with your role as a classroom teacher. Remember the hat that I told you to change the first night of class? This is your principal hat. So keep that hat on. Don't put that teacher hat back on right now. Okay? So this is any questions. Again, you've got your, okay, Janique, hold just a second. You've got your helpful hints document, which you need to follow. You've got your template, which you need to follow. And Janique, Dr. Revis, I'm going to go to somewhere. If you would respond to Janique's question, I'm going to go back and show something.
Okay. Yes, Janique, what is your question?
So the work that is due on Friday is not the same thing that we've been putting in task stream.
No. Task 5 is just your reflections. You don't meet with a PLC or a principal. It's totally just reflections of the work you've been doing. Either in your
But we
clinical,
cannot,
go ahead.
but we cannot reference the absolute. Like I'm confused when you say it's with the use the coursework, but don't reflect the absolute. Like that's a little
Okay.
confusing to me.
All right. You write 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph is a reflection of how you demonstrated that competency with your coursework. Okay. So you will
But I
reflect.
can't say anything about like the PLC. I can't say nothing about what I've been writing about for the past 6 weeks.
Yes. Yes.
But you've got to talk about your leadership with the PLC in your work with the APSL.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about.
You'll have like 2 reflections. The first one's always from your APSL work, everything you've been doing for the last 6 weeks about your APSL and how you've demonstrated leadership as you've led your PLC through all the meetings and the data dives and the all that stuff. The second piece, the second paragraph of each competency has to come from your clinical work, not your APSL work. Okay? Does that clear it up, Janique?
Um, yeah, it kind of does. I have more questions, but I just don't want to hold up the class.
Okay.
Okay, this is the template. Now notice we have added what's in black. Remember, you take that yellow highlighting out. But what's in black, this for task 5, this is what you use. Now we've added this here for information only. What's in fuchsia, the information below concerning the 21 competencies is for reference only. That's for your reference only. Do not include this information in the template work or in the narrative work that you're doing. This is just information only, showing you the 12 competencies again that you've got to use for the AAPSL, and then it's listing all 21 of those competencies. It's just as a point of reference for you there. So do not include that information in there. There's only one prompt, and this is it. This is all that you do there. This is what you see right here. You stop past after the word below and don't put anything else in there except the 12 competencies that you've got to do. Now, I want to go back to the helpful hints document, and we went over it, but we did not. Here it is. Okay, I want to go back up to the top where your narrative work begins. Okay. Okay, notice that before the competencies began, before communication begins, you always provide some type of narrative introduction. And notice what this person did, if I can get it to there. Notice what they did. This is just an example. Throughout the AAPSL process, I have found that I have grown as a leader. The tasks I have completed have allowed me to create, delegate, and reflect on the planning, implementation, and monitoring of the strategies placed into the action plan. And then it goes on and talks about, during my clinical experiences, I found that I was using many of the competencies in my assigned projects and duties. This is your own takeaway there. You need to put your own introduction there, and it needs to reflect you and your personality. This is just an example of just a brief introduction before you lead into your writing your 12 competencies. Dr. Rivers, have we left anything out?
No, just reiterating, you do not peer review this. You do only put it in task 5 for instructor review. Okay, there are no peer reviews. You don't upload it to the discussion board. The only person who sees this are Dr. Stedman and myself. And of course, you're a blind evaluator when you put it all together. Any questions?
Dr. Rivers, I'm
Yes.
going to make an executive decision. I'm going to hold off on, at this point, I think they've got enough to do. I'm going to hold off on talking to them about putting it all together into one document and that other stuff until next week.
Okay, sure.
Okay?
Sure.
That's what we'll do next week. Okay. Dr. Revis, do I need to pull up the case study information, or have you got it pulled up? I've got it pulled down if I need to show it.
My internet is very unstable.
Okay,
So
you have frozen a couple of times
yeah.
already.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm sorry. If you could pull up the case study, that would be good.
Okay.
Are we ready to do that?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Let me show you here. This is in Blackboard. Now, just remember, this is where we are now in Blackboard for assignments for grade. We're at AAPSL Task 5. Again, remember, it's for instructor review and a grade only this coming Friday. Then the AAPSL Task 5 will go in this coming Sunday night as a final grade. The AAPSL case study, we're going to talk about that tonight. This is where you find it and the components that go with that. And then the rest of the AAPSL that we'll talk about next week. But this is where you'll find the AAPSL case study. I'm going to click on that and open it up. Okay, Dr. Revis?
Okay, so now this is something you will do with your Zoom team. Okay, so first of all, you need to select a new Zoom leader or somebody volunteer to be a new Zoom leader. And everybody has to prepare for the meeting. So let's open up the directions, Dr. Stedman.
Okay.
This is a little bit different than what you did in your first Zoom meeting. In your first Zoom meeting, you were sharing your thoughts about how things went with your PLCs from the first one and the data dive and so on. On this one, it's on what you have learned. I think I froze up, didn't I?
Yes, ma'am. But that's okay. Go ahead.
You will have to reflect and put it in writing to show that you have learned some things in the APSL or that you have read some things. This is not about your opinion. Okay? So, for example, and I'll give you the example in just a minute. So, you read the case study, and everybody prepares a one paragraph response for each of the four questions. Again, you have to back up your thoughts and your ideas with either the work that we did in the APSL and or some of your readings or research that you did. The Zoom Master schedule sends out the link and, of course, prepares an agenda determining how you're going to share and records the case study session. So each team member during the Zoom will share their responses on those four questions to the group, and you engage in a scholarly discussion. Now, the word scholarly means it's not my opinion. I'm backing that up with research, or I'm backing it up with the model that we learned in the APSL. What did we learn in the APSL? Well, first of all, if you've got a problem or an issue in your school, we need to convene a PLC. Then, secondly, we need to look at our data and understand what our data is saying, the current state of things. Thirdly, we need to do some research. And fourthly, we need to collaborate. You just have completed. That's the work of the APSL.
And Dr.
But now,
Revis, wouldn't you say now, in when you're considering this, when you're doing your writing, your narrative work, and we'll show you those four questions in a minute. When you're doing your narrative work and when you're talking with your Zoom team, when you're sharing the scholarly discussion, remember, even though you have not had law and those, you need to consider, what does the law say? What does school law say? What does policy say? What are procedures? Those things that are in black and white, and there's that can be a part of your discussion as well. But again, make sure you know what you're talking about, and if you do refer to any of that, that it's the real deal, not something that you're just making up.
and so, you've done a lot of research in the APSL. You've done research on what a PLC is. You've done research on building efficacy. You've done research on your most pressing need. You've done a lot of research. So use some of those authors and some of those references. For example, this first one is around reading performance. So if you've got a good resource, you would need to share that resource as you're trying to make a point in the case study Zoom.
Right. And Dr. Revis, you just like many of you referenced oven and all in your work, and I was glad to see that. So this is an opportunity, and I'll use that example. When you're talking about something, you could refer to that, say, in my reading, oven and all indicated, you know, because that's part of the research, because
Yes.
that is researched and evidence-based information that's in that textbook.
So, guys, for my class at least, if you get on there and you just talk about what you think and you don't reference any research or any of the work that we've been doing in the APSL, you're not going to get 100.
Right.
It's all about what you have learned through your coursework, doing your APSL project and completing your research that you've done and any of the other readings.
Okay.
Okay, let's go now and look at the case study. And we're not going to read the case study to you. I shared with you, it's about a new principal taking over a school, which you all are going to do. That's the first thing you will do. And it's surrounding reading or the lack of good reading proficiency. So at the bottom of your case study, there are 4 questions. Those are the 4 questions that you need to have written at least a paragraph about and that you need to be prepared to share during your Zoom.
Okay. And we don't have to read the questions. I mean, you can read for them yourself. Dr. Revis, I've stopped sharing because when I turn my assignment in, I go to Blackboard and I turn my assignment in. What do I need to submit for my final grade in Blackboard?
Well, the first thing, don't forget, everybody has to submit the Zoom link. What you're going to do is a 2-part reflection. See, you have to have those 4 questions answered, and you're going to answer and share your answers during the Zoom meeting. So we don't need those 4 questions. What we need is a 2-part reflection again. The first part is a half a page reflection on what are the main tenets or ideas or the big takeaways in the case study itself. Don't just regurgitate and rehash all the case study, but what are the main points that jumped out at you and your Zoom team? The second part of your 1-page reflection is about your Zoom session and how well an overview of the relevant points that were brought up, how well you collaborated, and that you saw each other's perspectives, but you all agreed on such and this. Now you don't have to agree. That's not the point. The point is you write a half-page reflection on your Zoom session and how you guys worked through the issues of the case study. Now, in your next semester, and one of the things that we try to do from here on out is get you ready to be successful in next semester. You're going to have a lot of case studies. Case studies are about building a case for how you and why you would answer something. And it's not just, I keep going back, it's not just your opinion or what you think. You've got to, next semester you're going to support it with school law. But this semester you're supporting things with your AAPSL task and with your research that you've been doing in your readings.
And then whoever the Zoom leader is, they will send you the recorded link from your session, and everybody will submit that same link, just like you did with the research project for the APSL as well. Everybody, the Zoom team leader will send that same link. So all you're going to submit to us is the Zoom link and your two-part written assignment that Dr. Revis just talked about. The questions we don't need to see. We'll know whether you know how you have done your work and how you talk and how you respond to those in the scholarly discussion that you're going to have.
Now, guys, the Zoom team assignment is not due by this Sunday night. It's for next week.
Next,
Okay. But we just wanted to get you just thinking about it. Go ahead and get together and set up a time when you're going to do it. And that way you can be very well prepared when you go into it. And all of you were really prepared when you went into the first one. But this one's a little bit different. There's more meat to it. And you've got to put a little more prep time into it, I think.
right. Okay. At this point, any questions about the case study? We will remind you of it next week. Some of you may decide even before next week that you want to go ahead and do it. That's left up to you, but it's not due until not this Sunday, but next Sunday. Okay.
All right, let's reiterate what is due this Sunday.
Okay. Well, let's start with tomorrow.
Okay, let's start with tomorrow. Okay. What is due for tomorrow? Megan or Crevio, what is due?
The task 4 revisions.
All your task 4 revisions by 6 p.m. Thank you. What is due by Friday at 6 p.m.?
Anybody?
Task 5.
Task 5.
Task 5, is it for a final?
No.
It's for
Review.
for your peers and for your instructor?
Just
No.
Instructor only. Okay. Dr. Revis? Go ahead.
Okay, and then Sunday evening, what is due? What is one thing that's due?
Final
Tanya?
task 4.
Task 5.
Task 5 completed. So, Dr. Stedman and I are going to be working Friday night to try to get this back to you and feedback to you so you'll have time Saturday and Sunday up until 6 p.m. to make any revisions. Guys, shouldn't be any revisions. It's just your reflections.
Right. And the good thing about it is when you get it back, if we say you're clear, guess what you can do? All you got to do is turn it right back in for a final grade and you're going to get 100 on it. So, I mean, that's how when I know I make it sound real simple and Dr. Revis does too, but it is not rocket science. Okay.
And then what is there anything else to Sunday evening?
Not for Dr. Revis and me, anything else? Okay, good. There isn't anything else. Okay. So, Dr.
That's 4 and 5. That's it.
Right. So, Dr. Revis, I think we'll come back at the very end to see if there's anybody with a question. But at this time, Dr. Hamilton, we're going to turn it over to you.
Dr. Hamilton, you're muted.
That is just great. Thank you for that. I appreciate you telling me that. Okay, now, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you being here and all your time and attention. So we're going to go on to what in this world Centers for Disease Control. We don't need that. This is what I'm working on in my real world, apparently, right? So where did my garden web? Here we go. I'll just go back to this. So if this is not showing right, because sometimes when you switch screens, in fact, I'll just go off for just a second and reshare, because sometimes Zoom, for whatever reason, when you switch screens, sometimes it doesn't cooperate with you. So when you go to your course and you go to your internship class shell, and remember that what we're doing now, and it can get confusing with task 5 of the AAPSL. Task 5 of the AAPSL is more of a detailed narrative, more of a detailed narrative of your work with the AAPSL, with those competencies, and then your internship with those competencies and how that aligns with research. This is your competency folio that you'll be keeping throughout your 3-month coursework that we're talking about, which is in Task Stream Competency Folio. So if you go to your internship shell, the first thing I want you to look at is your calendar, and I have gone in and I have updated everything for you. So as you see tonight, your communication description and artifact was due. That needed to be in, so that way I can start giving you feedback before you have to start doing a lot at one time, so that you can know like the nuances that you understood and applied correctly, and maybe the nuances that we need to go back and look at. I had about 58% of both classes combined submit something. Everyone has at this time received feedback. Some of you are good to go. You have your brief description identified as like AAPSL Spring 2025, let's say in communication. You wrote a brief description about how you have had experience and you have demonstrated competence in that competency. And then you need the attached artifact that supports what you wrote about in your brief description. And that artifact should also be labeled Spring 2025 AAPSL, so that in December, when you've combined things for the whole year in your program, you can go back and match and say, oh yeah, that was the AAPSL, that was the AAPSL, that was the APTEL, that was the APTEL, that was open-ended, that was open-ended. You want to be able to make that very easy for yourself. So that's why labeling is important. So if you go to your calendar, you will notice that next week, which is March already, March the 5th, you have 4 folio submissions due next Wednesday, and that's going to be change management, conflict management, creative thinking, and delegation. And these are intentional to help align with what you're doing in task 5 of the AAPSL. Also, when you go to your internship shell, when you go to your content and you come down to this week, which is,
Dr.
sorry.
Hamilton, before you go any
Yes.
further, Jaquetta, what is your question?
Hey, Dr. Hamilton, I submitted my work, but I don't see any feedback. Where would that information be?
Okay.
Jaquetta Hammonds,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't have anything from
Hey,
you.
Jaquetta, just hold off in the end, and then let's.
We'll talk about that in just a minute, okay?
Okay.
Let's hold off on that.
Okay, so hold on. So this is 226. So go to Dr. Hamilton, and that should not say hidden. Why does that say hidden? But go to 226, and then you will see in there that for the 4 that are due next week, there's a brief description or whatever about all 4 of those that are due next week. You can read those. And then it gives you some ideas or whatever about artifacts that you could include.
Dr. Hamilton, open all of those up. They're hidden from students.
Oh, shucks, they sure are. I thought I had unhidden those. Thank you for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So while we're doing this, I'm just going to go ahead and go to C4 and make sure that those are not hidden. And because you do have to be able to see them, right? So, Jaquetta, so there, first of all, there was a problem and they didn't have my thing set up correctly. Okay, those are all visible. Didn't have my thing set up correctly, and so you couldn't request from me. So I'm going to stop sharing. And so can somebody, I mean, it doesn't matter who, Amy, Jordan, Heather, Christopher, Della, um, Dana, Megan, Nicole, Janique, Jacob, somebody, can you help with how to make sure that I can, how to do these are who I have responses from in task stream right here. Can somebody unmute,
So
help with
I
that
just
process?
I just went through and there was a tab for feedback and Dr. Hamilton's name popped up and I selected that and then it was communication. I didn't have to really look for it. It was just there.
I'm logged into my task stream. I'm happy to share my screen real
Oh, do
quick.
you mind?
So,
Can you share, Jordan?
if can you see my task stream right
Yep,
here?
I see
Okay.
it. Yep.
So under communication, or as you get
Mhm.
to each one, you'll just go up at the top. There's a comment tab. You'll click there and then select request comment. You'll select each one that you want to get feedback for, and then after, I don't want to click on it because I don't want to send it in because I'm not done with it. But after you hit continue, it'll drop down with a list of all the
Jordan,
instructions.
if you don't mind, just go ahead and I'll just go in and clear it out. It's
Okay.
fine. I can just go in and clear it out and say thanks for the demo.
Okay. So then after that, you'll just select Dr. Hamilton and then continue, and it sends the request in.
Thank you, Jordan. I hope that helps everyone. And if that doesn't,
It
then
did.
oh, good, good, good. Yay, yay, yay. Okay. And from the professor side, we can't show that. So, you know, it makes it a little difficult. So, yeah, so we've had some really good submissions and I appreciate that. And that's keeping us going. We're sort of playing catch up a little with the AAPSL because, of course, you don't get your task stream accounts initially, but then with the AAPTEL, it'll be spread out a little bit more and you won't have quite so many at one time. But yep, I will, you know, the next few days, if I don't hear from anybody, I'll reach out to you individually. But you're doing good work and we appreciate you and thank you so much. Any
Janique,
questions about anything?
Jaquetta, did that answer your question? Okay, give me a thumbs up if okay, gotcha. Okay.
Okay, thank you all.
Okay. Dr. Revis, I'll let you bring closure, or ask you to bring closure to the night.
Okay, so that's kind of all we have for class tonight. But if you have questions, please stay on. If you feel good about everything, you are welcome to log off at this time. I think you're going to be able to catch your breath this week and next week. You probably don't believe me, but you will. You're not having to meet with your PLC and getting all that together. And so it will probably seem like you can catch your breath just a little bit. But if you're ready to sign off, we will see you. Look forward to seeing your task 5 work this week and your task 4 completed.
And task 5.
And task 5. Any questions? If you want to do your virtual hand raise, that would be good.
Okay, Amy,
I had a question, Dr. Hamilton, about the log. Do you want us to add the headings that you had in the sample onto our log and organize it that way?
You can, if that's helpful to you, to make sure that you have everything together, but it is not a requirement.
Okay. But we do have to have 70 hours of leadership, 20, it has to be broken down that way.
Yes, and that's why I just thought labeling in that way might help you keep up with it better, right? But you
Okay.
don't have to. But yeah,
Okay.
you do have to have those hour requirements, correct?
Okay. Thank you.
You're
Della?
welcome.
My question is about the AAPSL. Like, how is that formulated? Is it a maximum of 10 hours or is it a minimum of 10 hours?
You can use up to 10 hours for that. Up to 10 hours, maximum of 10 hours. You won't have more than that. And like you have to have 200 hours by the end of the semester, right? So you can have 250 hours. So if you go over, that's fine, but you still have to have the minimum requirements for all the other sections. So if you have 250 hours, that's fine, but it's not going to roll over to help credit your hours for the other semesters. So, you know, you could have 15 hours in that, that's fine, but you still have to have your other hours in the other things, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay, thanks. If you go over, that's okay, but you still have to have the minimum for all the other areas.
Okay, Jordan?
Where do we find the case study at again, in the course shell?
Okay, when you go into, let me show you. Let me share.
And who is this talking? Sorry. If you purchased this book, oh, is it blurring because I got my background blurred? School leadership, case study, solving school problems is in your book as well.
Okay, here you go, Jordan. In Blackboard, you see where it says grade assignments for grade?
Yes.
Okay, when you scroll down, there it is. There's the AAPSL Task 5 draft for instructor review, AAPSL Task 5 final, and then underneath that, you should find the AAPSL case study.
Okay.
Right. And
Thank
Jordan,
you.
if you bought the book for the class book,
Okay.
the principal is the instructional leader. There's two parts to it. It starts on page 31, and it gives a lot more detail than what's in the course shell. But yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton, for sharing that. I had even forgotten to say that.
It's okay.
Thank you.
And then one other quick question for the APSL and our internship hours. Just to clarify, is that a maximum of 10 hours for all 5 tasks combined, or per
I
task?
think it is. I think that's correct. I don't have that pulled up right now, but I'm pretty sure that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is that correct, Dr. Stedman? I can't remember right now.
I
Sorry.
think it's 10 hours per
Per
task.
task? I think it's per task. I said that, but now I think it's per task.
I think it's per task.
I
So
think so
up to a maximum then of 50 hours total.
I think so. I'm going to try to go back
Yes.
and look right quick.
Okay.
That's all sort of new because they just increased the hour requirement recently. And so that's all sort of new for us.
Okay, while Dr. Hamilton's looking for that, Della, what's your question? I can't hear you. You're muted.
I don't have a question. I'm
Okay,
sorry. I
okay.
forgot to raise my hand.
James, you have a question?
Yes, on task 5, is that first image of the 12 competencies that you want us to do?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Those are the 12, yes.
And those are aligned with the first 12 that they will be doing in their competency folio as well.
Right.
So that's, you know, they're working on the same ones at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to go to this and we're going to see right here that it says AAPSL, that's correct. AAPSL task 1 is 10, AAPSL task 2 is 10, 3 is 10, 4 is 10, 5 is 10. So that's a total of 50 for the AAPSL, correct?
And remember, you're showing your leadership while doing task 1, your leadership while doing task 2. And the question, the question was asked about research that you bring back to your PLC and to your principal, etc., that can count in that as well.
Right. And then you have to have at least 70 hours from leadership, 70 hours from technical, and 10 hours can come from supervision.
And all 10 of those hours don't need to be bus duty.
Correct.
Cafeteria duty. Okay?
That's right. And that's coming up due pretty soon, March the 9th.
Okay. Any other questions? Everybody good? Okay, Salita, hold on just a second at the end, okay? We'll stop recording.